you've never really watched Parliament in action before, it's likely you'll have seen a clip of Prime Minister's questions on the news or on social media. We're used to seeing the Prime Minister respond to questions in the House of Commons every week as the head of the government.
He will know, Mr. Speaker, that last year was the first year on record that renewables produced more of the energy of this country than fossil fuels.
Will the Prime Minister reassure me that he will look at this to show that much doesn't have to always get more?
The Prime Minister is confusing scrutiny for attacks.
It is imperative that the UK is vocal on human rights, freedom to gather and protest, freedom of speech, and upholding press freedom.
But although Prime Minister's questions may make the headlines, it's just one of the ways Parliament scrutinises government. Questions are used in Parliament as a tool to check and challenge the work of the government.
If, Mr. Speaker, I can answer question 4 and 5 together. Against a background of rising standards, the attainment gap has closed by 13% at primary and 9% at secondary schools since 2011.
Right, and I have seen her letter, so I thank her for that, and she will be getting a response to the specific points that she has just raised.
In government, there are around 20 cabinet ministers chosen by the Prime Minister. Each runs a government department such as the Home Office or the Department for Education. They attend Parliament regularly to explain their decisions and to answer questions about their department's work. The Cabinet takes collective responsibility for decisions made by the government as a whole. Other ministers in the House of Commons and the House of Lords also respond to questions throughout the week. Questions are a really important tool for Parliament. They're a way to obtain information, press for action, and refine proposed legislation. We're going to explore what scrutiny looks like in practice through a series of clips. To start, you'll see a minister responding to an urgent question in the House of Commons.
Urgent questions, Julian Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Minister for Digital Culture, Media and Sport if you'll make a statement on the government plans for online harms legislation.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for their question on this very important issue. This government is taking significant action to tackle the issue of harm taking place online and make this country the safest place in the world to go online.
Any MP can apply to the Speaker for an urgent question if they think an issue is important and requires a minister to update the House of Commons on how the government is responding to the issue. If the Speaker agrees, a minister must attend to respond to the question. Urgent questions are usually quite generic in format, asking for the minister to make a statement on an issue. But following the government statement, the supplementary or follow-up questions begin. This is when the real scrutiny begins, as MPs can drill deeper for more detailed information. By convention, the MP who raised the urgent question is the first to ask a supplementary question.
Will the Minister also assure the House that legislation will be forthcoming this calendar year, as we've been waiting a very long time for this?
Next, the Shadow Minister responds to the debate. Shadow Ministers are members of the opposition frontbench who shadow the work of a particular minister and closely examine the work of that department. Please note that due to the topic of this debate, the Shadow Minister does include real examples of online harm in her response.
Mr. Speaker, this response on online harms is overdue, weak and ultimately ineffective. Social media companies will have a duty of care, which Ofcom will regulate. Good. Tech companies always had a duty of care, in my opinion. But the first online suicide was over 10 years ago, and still victims await legislation. When will these proposals be law? Online harms cause untold damage in the real world. If the Minister can't give clear answers to these questions, then victims past and present will have lost out in another wasted year.
Now other MPs have an opportunity to ask questions. So this process of scrutiny through questions enables Parliament to do its job, to hold government to account, ensuring that policies and legislation are working in practice. MPs can draw the government's attention to places where policy or legislation could be more effective and press for action. Questions and debates in the Chamber demonstrate how Parliament checks and challenges the work of government. Another example is through the detailed inquiries conducted by select committees of both houses. Select committees in the House of Commons predominantly shadow government departments, conducting inquiries which examine their spending, administration and policies.
What do you say to those people? Are we being effective? Are we there for them when they need them? Because it seems to me that the communication has not been as good as it could have been.
House of Lords committees cover broader issues which cut across government departments. They're usually made up of 8 to 15 members and conduct inquiries by gathering oral and written evidence from experts and members of the public with direct experience of the issue under investigation. The issue of online safety that we saw raised in urgent questions in the House of Commons chamber was raised again by the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee. Both the Cabinet Minister and Permanent Secretary for that department were called to give oral evidence.
Does the government recognise the link between anonymity and the spread of misinformation and harmful content online?
If people feel that they can act anonymously, they will act in a more aggressive fashion. I certainly.
Once a select committee has completed an inquiry, they will publish their report, which outlines their investigation, findings and recommendations for the government. The government must respond to the report within 60 days. The work of select committees allows Parliament to look at important issues closely and hold government departments to account. So, back to our question, what is the difference between Parliament and government? Whilst the government leads the country, sets the budget and introduces policy and legislation, Parliament's role is to scrutinise, ask questions and to represent our interests, making sure they are taken into account by the government.